It's gone just 6 p.m. UK time, and this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I'm Saad, and very shortly my colleague Gregory is going to be joining us. The aim of the show is to introduce Light of Truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And every week we have a new topic for discussion. The topic for this week is the gift of love. My colleague Gregory has just joined us. Welcome, Gregory. How are you doing, and how is the weather where you are?
Thanks. One is fine. Weather is calm, a bit cool.
Okay, here in London, the weather, it has been cool as well. Definitely cooler than last week. Temperatures dropped from over 30s to now about mid-20s. But in my room right now, I'm feeling quite humid. Maybe I need a bit of a breeze to cool me down a little. But in any case, dear listeners, welcome to the show, the Spiritual Discussion Program. As I said, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And as I said, every week we have a new topic for discussion. The topic for tonight is the gift of love. The gift of love. If you wish to join in with any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number. I'm going to actually add the prefix there. So it is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And just to repeat the number again, is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, you'll come across a button, or on this Zeno screen, the play button there. Sorry, that's to listen to us on the radio. What I meant is where you want to, if you have any questions, then you can go to this box called Bless Chat. Bless Chat. And there you can type in any questions or comments. I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experience of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole without leaving any gaps. Again and again in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic for discussion tonight is the gift of love. The gift of love. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which I'll begin with the prefix, which is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is there's one other where you can contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the home page, you will see a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. Now, as usual, I like to look up the meaning of the words in the topic. So the first key word we have is gift. Now, this is what I found in the dictionary. A gift is something given to someone voluntarily, without expecting payment or anything in return. That's the first one. There's a second one. So let me repeat that. A gift is something given to someone voluntarily without expecting payment or anything in return. Gregory, how good is this meaning for our discussion?
Well, superficially, yes, it is helpful.
Okay, let's look at the second meaning, which is a bit different, I would say. It also means a natural talent or special ability. How about that?
Yes, but in that case, the giver was not mentioned.
Yes, okay. Okay, maybe you can add that in there, Gregory, because I'm also thinking, okay, the giver. Yes, what is it that you would like us to know about?
Whatever gift is given, it's a gift. There must be a giver. From both of what you just read, the giver, maybe it's thought about implicitly, but the giver is not considered. That's what I'm stressing generally.
Okay. What I'll do is I will continue and then let us bring it out later in our discussion. The next key word I have is love, which is, of course, how can I say, big word. And so I looked that up as well. It says love is a profound, multifaceted emotion, an active commitment, characterized by strong affection, deep attachment, and an unselfish concern for the well-being and happiness of another person. Let me repeat that. Love is a profound, multifaceted emotion, an active commitment, characterized by strong affection, deep attachment, an unselfish concern for the well-being and happiness of another person. How's this one, Gregory?
That again is quite superficial. For when you started, you talk about the gift. So when you look at the whole expression, the gift of love, it is love that has given something. So what was being read out is basically some of the attributes and what love does. And so you could see that one is looking at this expression holistically to ensure it's all encompassing, so that one can then use that basis for explanation rather than, looking at it from an intellectual. That means a very limited perspective. Like you keep stressing, it's the perspective that really counts.
Okay, so please, could you add or say more about what is missing, you can say, from these definitions?
From what?
Love, yeah, specifically love. That's what I mean.
Yeah, the case of love, there are two perspectives one may consider. Love as a noun. A noun that is the object that does the giving, or love as from the perspective of a verb in which something has been given out. So, but when you take the whole expression, you could have a picture which you can hold. However, because in our discussion, which is more from an intuitive perspective or from a spiritual perspective, one is considering the gifts that the I, which is the love, the gifts that it gives out, that is what, from a spiritual standpoint, the topic is considering.
Okay, so we are looking, as always, from the spiritual perspective, as you said, or intuitive perspective, rather than the, you could say, more limited of the perspective from the intellect. Gregory, can I just clarify right now, is love an emotion? Because that which means, let me say what if emotion is, warm feeling inside, or in, well, when I say inside, let me just put warm feeling, and then, so yes, I know again that is a limited thing, but yes, can we classify love as an emotion?
Well, one may consider emotion as that which is given by love.
Okay.
So you find that it is a gift itself. So what we are trying to differentiate is between what love gives and what love itself is. Though very connected, because love can only give what it has.
Okay. I'm trying to, how can I say, come to understanding on what you're saying there. Okay. So let's carry on working on it. And sure, let's say slowly but surely we will get there. Now, okay. Now, there's when I do the research on this topic of love or gift of love, I get many, how can I say, a lot of information, you can say, that I can look at. So, and I'm trying my best to not go into everything because it's getting a little bit too much, let's say. For we could just keep talking as many programs as we want. So, but we want to cover it in this program. So now, okay, let me think of something. We said it's spiritual. Love is spiritual. Okay, and let me ask this straight away, Gregory. Is it natural? That might sound silly, but is it natural?
Yes, it's natural.
Okay, and
that means it conforms to the law. To the laws of nature.
Okay,
and but one has to be careful, because from a spiritual standpoint, there's a difference between that which is of spirit and that which is of nature.
Right. Okay. So let me look at another part of that then. Is love, and the other thing is, Gregory, this love, the word love, of course, we human beings have experience of it. However, we also have the Almighty. And, many people say, oh, the Almighty God is also love. So but we humans and God are quite, I know some people think we are something of the same type or origin, but actually we are humans who are created, and then there's the Almighty who is the creator. So there's a difference in there. And yet there's a common thing where we say God is love, and the human beings also, let's say, I won't say human beings are love, but they are able to experience love. So when we are talking, and I'm trying again to, how can I say, get to a good concept, clear concept of this love. So first thing, Gregory, there is the human love and God's love the same thing or quite different?
Of course, they are quite different, because the origin of that which is radiated is different. Whereas that which is radiated from the Almighty, that is boundless. Whereas the human love, like you mentioned, is tied to the abilities of the human personality.
Thank you for that. That's things are becoming clearer as we break it down, as we reflect on these concepts, that yes, the love of God is different from the human. Yes, I know it sounds obvious, but then the clarity is that God's love is boundless, while ours is bounded. So there is a difference, immediate difference there. Okay. Now, where I'm coming from there, Gregory, we are talking about the gift of love. And let's say we human beings, being a creation of the Almighty God the Father, it is, let's say, through his love that we came into being. And then, let's say, also it is said in the Bible that we are made in the image or after the image of God. So there's something makes us, let's say, connected with God in a way, or some characteristic that is, let's say, come through God into us. So that, and one of that is love that we are talking about now. So when we look at that, let me see. Yes. Okay, yes, Gregory. There's we're talking about divine love or God's love from God, and then the human or spiritual. Is there? Let me see. that this human love, and when we look at it in terms of God's love, uh, is it a built-in quality of the human being? Let me say like that, to express love.
Well, thanks for this particular question, and it requires some key points which have been taken for granted. You read out something that man is made in the image or after the image of the Almighty. First, there needs to be clarification. When that statement is made, it only means man is made after that which the love of the Almighty expresses itself. That which the Almighty expresses itself, or the love of the Almighty expresses itself, these are the radiations from the source of all power. Therefore, that which is divine, which is also the intrinsic radiation of the Almighty, that is love itself. And when creation came into existence, now you can understand when he said it's made after that which the Lord Almighty expresses itself, you now have creation. That is within creation that is being referred to. And it's not a direct line when man is considered. By man, one's referring to the human spirit here on earth that is developing its talent. The gift are the talents. One may consider them to be as the talents which had been inborn in the human personalities that it needs to develop. So these are gifts which has been sown into it. And only when it develops it, then that act of development of these talents in accordance with the laws of creation, which laws of creation are the manifestations of justice. Once you have the development going along that direction, then you have that gift which is now of value. That is one aspect. The other gift of love are the opportunities. The opportunities which you have in creation. Creation itself is a gift. And when you now consider that creation has been given as a gift, such that the human personality, who is now permitted to wander in creation, to develop these gifts in accordance with justice, then you find the guidance which has been put there is also a gift. So creation is a gift. The guidance, justice, is also a gift. So you find that when you even bring it down to the human personality here on earth, in order to fulfill that which has been sown into it, It is permitted to come into this world of matter. It passes through the ethereal realm and now incarnates in gross matter. For the incarnation to be possible, you find that a body is prepared for it. It is permitted a body. That in itself is a gift. So wherever the human personality turns, as long as its activities resonate with the justice of the Almighty, which is the will of the Almighty, then is able to develop these gifts. Or one might put it very bluntly, is able to develop these tokens that have been sown into it.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for explaining this, so the gift of love being given as the formation of this creation that we live in, and as part of that, we ourselves being created as human beings. And in our case, there's a development process which we have to go through, and all of this is part of the gift of the love of God, the creation, and then the process that is all involved in that, what happens in creation. And then we, human beings, have our own, in quotes, way of expressing love too, which is, of course, cannot match the level of the love of the Almighty. And as you said, you can only act according to what you carry within you, the abilities and what you carry within. So, of course, the Almighty, let's say, is greater than us. So his ability is on a different level. But this is not a competition about who is bigger or smaller. It's each person or each being has his own activity to fulfill his purpose, his or her purpose. So, thank you for that. Now, before I continue, I want to let the listeners know you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Aprushin. If you wish to know more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is the gift of love. The gift of love. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number. It's with this prefix, which is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. We are also broadcasting live on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1 That's the number one. Space, Grail message, space, the gift of love, which is the topic for tonight. And then after the show ends, which is 8 p.m. UK time, you can listen to a recording of this show, also on YouTube. You go to the search box and type in the same words, which are Bless Radio 1, that's the number one there, space, Grail message, space, the gift of love. And of course, you can listen to the recording of our previous shows, also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno. Go to, the website is zeno.fm/radio/bless radio 1. That's the number one there. Now, my colleague has, Mrs. Harriet Hoppe has been sending some questions as we've been broadcasting. So I'm just going to check what we can use some of them. Yes, actually there's something which is very relevant. I'm going to go to a reference in the Bible for this one. So let me just go there. It is in John chapter 3, verses 16 to 17. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Praise God, that's in brackets. Let me just repeat that. So this is from John in the Bible, New Testament, which is John chapter 3, verse 16 to 17. It says, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. And then it says brackets, praise God. So Gregory, this looks like it is calling Jesus like an ultimate sacrifice of God's love, that he sent his Son to be sacrificed for the sake of humanity. And that is like a gift from God. That is how can I say, how it has been understood. So, Gregory, is that correct?
That expression has been grossly distorted. First it said, the Lord Almighty so loves the world that he sent his only Son. Again, that is wrong. So you'll find that those who took out those expressions, they only spoke in accordance with their self-created limitations. For in that same text, it is said that there are three persons in one God. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, when such expressions as you just quoted are read out, and in that same Christian teaching, three persons have been talked about, and two of them are the sons, then you find there's a contradiction. So that cannot be right. Secondly, the expression sacrifice is also badly understood. To sacrifice something doesn't mean to destroy, doesn't mean to kill. It's more of a decision, either to go this way or to go that way. So if you have given up one way for the other, that means you sacrifice one way for the other. The sacrifice which is referred to in Christian teaching, that sacrifice which, when considered rightly, only means to make that intrinsic decision to follow him. To follow him only means to not only to believe in him, but by taking the first step in believing in him and subsequently examining that which you believe in that trust, you will find that the human personality will be well guided, and the necessary experiences that it needs will arise, because it will go through different paths while ignoring those paths which are not of value. So that is what sacrifice is. And in following that path, the seeking human personality will mature very quickly, which maturity is in accordance with the will of the Almighty. That is what brings the benefits. That is what is of value. For when the human spirit is concerned, its tasks, it has been permitted to wander as an unconscious spirit seed grain. In that process of wandering, it started as being unconscious. In its path, it becomes conscious, that is conscious of its surrounding and to some extent of its abilities. Only when it brings these abilities into strict activities does it become self-conscious. That means these abilities will awaken. When they awaken, they are then strengthened, and when used again and again, they become stronger and stronger. And if these abilities are used in accordance with the will, you will find that the human spirit becomes self-conscious along the line, such that it may go back to its origin. Which origin is where it started as an unconscious personality. Now, having come back fully conscious of its personality, is able to weave the radiations to send down to others who are just starting their journey, such that they themselves will become not only conscious in a step-by-step manner, but also self-conscious. Then the human personality would have fulfilled that which has been given to it as a gift, such that it will cultivate it and become of benefit not only to itself, but to all creatures in creation.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for this answer and the picture you're painting for us. What you're pointing to is people have, let's say, a certain idea, oh, Jesus came for this purpose, to save us. But when, let's say, they somehow fall into a misconception that, oh, I believe in Jesus and then I will be saved. But that's not, how can I say, sufficient to just believe. You must follow. He also said that, Jesus also said that, follow him, which means to follow what he taught, the teaching, the truth that he brought. So that means you have to do something. And not believe is not enough. And then we started earlier part of the show about that through the gift of God, this creation came into being, and we are one of those that have been created in this creation. So each one that is a creature in the creation has a role to play, a job to fulfill. So we human beings also have a role to play and fulfill. And Jesus came to help us with that, let's say, when we went astray. Because before Jesus, there had been many prophets already who were already guiding us, but somehow it didn't seem to be working. And so Jesus now came, who is the Son of God, as is said, as we know from the Bible. But then it was not about believing, like I said, it was about following, and which means doing something. And that is a journey of development for human beings. That is, we started, as you said, Gregory, as a human spirit seed grain. Sounds weird. Imagine a plant. It is a seed before it became a plant. So we human also were a seed which has been planted in this creation, or let's say on the earth, to be more clear about. Well, it's not just the earth, but basically we've been planted in the creation, and there's a process that we have to go through of development. That's the key point there. And that development is from unconscious seed or grain into conscious, and then actually self-conscious, which is the real human being, or the mature human being, let me say. So yes, that's the journey, and this is the point of the coming of Jesus and others before and even after. So now, let's see. Now I want to move to a little bit different aspect now of love, or where love is involved. I'm talking now about forgiveness. Now, in a way, my question is asking, is love blind? So what I mean by that is, let's say we're talking about human beings now. Something one human being does is related to another, let's say, somehow connected together. One of them, let's say, does something wrong, and the other one is wrong to the other person, let's say, and then that person now responds. Let's say they respond out of love, meaning you can forgive. Let's say forgiveness is the thing. And then one thinks, oh, does that mean that love is blind? You forgive and you forgive and you forgive. So Gregory, is love, in this context of what I've said there, is love blind?
No, love is not blind. And love cannot be blind. But love, in its activities, sees more than the other. For if you need to be able to help another, let's say a child, you yourself will see the strong points, the strong inclination of the child, and the weak points of the child. That which is of love will find a way to strengthen the strong inclination which is of benefit to the child, such that it, through its further activities, will overcome that which is not in accordance with the laws of creation through which it itself, the child, came into existence. So you find in that operation of love, the radiations which the giver of that love shares is to enable the other, to permit the other the space to realize many things and make changes to the way the other operates. So that is why many consider it, love is blind. Far from it. Love is kind, doesn't mean it is weak. Love is severe. For when in its activities, the radiations or the token which has been sent to the other person, when it is seen how he or she misuses it, there are reciprocal activities which are in accordance with the laws of nature, the laws of creation, which are bound to return to the offending one. It is those reciprocal activities which will purify that person. That again is love, but not as many view these things. That the person who had been offended forgives. That gives the impression that that person who has been offended does not wish to have a thread which will bind him or her to the other person, which thread is not beneficial to the other person. So you have the scenario where love in its activities is not blind, but is seeing. And even within its sight, is able to find other ways to be helpful to the others who have not yet matured to that level of recognition.
Thank you very much for that answer there, Gregory. Now, I'm just going to go to another reference from the Bible, again, where this is Jesus talking on the sermon, it's in the Sermon of the Mount. And this is in Matthew chapter 5, verse 39. And he says, do not resist, this is Jesus speaking, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. So Gregory, this one, how can I say, is difficult to understand or difficult to make sense, you can say. So let me just repeat that. So this is Jesus speaking in his Sermon on the Mount, and this is in Matthew chapter 5, verse 39. He said, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. So what is that meant to mean, Gregory? Invite another slap?
First, you must ask yourself, if you resist, how will you be in a position to help the so-called an evil person? That is one aspect. The other aspect is that when it said, if you are slapped on your left cheek, you turn your right cheek, the person who is concerned in this case, who needs to make amends to what he or she had done even in the past, the reciprocal activities is what caused that which one may call a slap. When one considers the concept as a whole, the way Christ put it in that Sermon on the Mount, you will find that it means that in your activities, proceed in such a way as to reduce the amount of reciprocal activity which will hit you. If that reciprocal activity is in form of a karma, you would wish that these karmas will come in good time so that you yourself can recognize what it is and sever that connection. So all these sayings of Christ must be taken within the right perspective, because it's only within the right perspective that it makes sense. But what we find in many of these scriptural writings, they are taken singly out of context, and therefore it becomes very difficult for the modern day man. Much of that which may throw clarifications in this, one may examine the work in the light of truth, the Grail message of Abdushin. There, many things will become very clear.
Thanks very much for that, Gregory. Now, I've got another question, which is, earlier we were talking about the definition of these words like gift and love. So a gift, we said, is a present with no expectation of anything in return. So a gift is a present with no expectation of anything in return. So then my question comes, is love an unconditional gift?
Well, in the human definition, like you find in the dictionary or Google, see, there is no expectation of anything in return. That cannot be the case. That is not the case, because when there is no expectation of returns, you find that many a time it is not taken seriously. There is, or taken a very simple example, you cannot give grains of corn to a farmer to plant as a gift, and the farmer goes to the farm, he plants these grains and is not expecting a return. That means the planting was done in vain. Therefore, you find that the context in which some of these things are quoted, that context is very narrow. And many of these things are considered from a human narrow point. That which has been granted to others as tokens, those tokens must be cultivated such that it will bring them a bountiful harvest. The expectation may not be straight from the giver, but the expectation could be the expectations of creation. Even it is made very clear when Christ gave the expression to love your neighbor as yourself. And subsequently they did ask, and who is my neighbor? And he gave an example of someone who was beaten, all the things taken, was injured. There came a priest who turned the other way. There came a Levite who went the other way. Then came the Good Samaritan. And Christ, in his nature, did ask, of these, who is his neighbor? And they rightly pointed out. And what was his final exhortation? Go thee and do likewise. So he gave them that answer to a question which they asked him, and he made it very clear, you yourself must go and do likewise. For when something is given out to another, so it will bring benefit not only to that individual, but to all. Therein lies the concept, one for all and all for one.
Thank you very much for this answer and picture that you're painting for us, Gregory. I want to now just let the listeners know you're listening to Bless Radio. This is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. If you wish to know more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is the gift of love. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number with the prefix. It is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'm going to just repeat the number. It's +44 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. And we're also broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1, space Grail message, space the topic for tonight, which is the gift of love. And after the show ends at 8 p.m. UK time, you can listen to a recording of this show also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the same words in the search box, which are Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1 there, space, Grail message, space, the gift of love. And of course, you can listen to the recording of our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno, that's ZENO.FM/radio/bless radio 1. That's the number 1 there. Now, I'm going to look at, yes, it's again another, let's say, quote from Jesus. Yes, this is from Mark chapter 12, verses 29 to 31. And Jesus is talking about the most important commandment. So this is again going back to just the quote is from Mark chapter 12, verses 29 to 31. The most important commandment is this: Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is one and the only Lord. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. The second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. So Gregory, here's some, you could say, an instruction from Jesus about loving your Lord God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. Let me stop on that one. So Gregory, what does that imply, or what does it require from us human beings to love your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and all your strength?
From the human perspective, love is more of a binding. That which you love, you are bound to it. Therefore, the advice is to look up and bind yourself to that which radiates from the Almighty. And that radiation is the love. Natural radiation from the Almighty, that is the manifestation of the love. Therefore, you should bind yourself. The question how the binding is, that's another topic. But the picture is to bind in deep within yourself. That binding sometimes presents itself as reverence. All right, looking up to, in reverence, to the guidance that comes from on high. That is love. Only in such a way can the human spirit, who is of different species from the Lord Almighty, only in these radiations is he able to bind itself, looking up in reverence to the source through which all that is beneficial in creation came into existence.
Thank you for that. Now there was a second part of it, which Jesus said, which he said, the second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. So I know you mentioned that in a previous answer. So yes, that's obviously a little bit different from the first one. So how can we, what does that mean? Let me just say that.
But one can already see that, strictly speaking, there are only two. The source from which all that really exists came into existence, the human personality must look up to in reverence and follow the guidance. One of the guidance is, just as you yourself were granted the opportunity to come into existence, so are others granted the opportunity. So show respect to others who, like you, are striving to come to a recognition of this love, and in the respects and supports which you grant to them, you create an atmosphere around yourself which will be beneficial not only to you but also to them. Just as you yourself are striving to be of support to your neighbor, so also are others who are also your neighbors but are one step higher than yourself. These are neighbors who may be in flesh and blood, or may not be in flesh and blood, but they are still your neighbors, and are a bit more mature than yourself, or have come to a better recognition. Just as you show concern and care for them, so you will find that those who stand above you will show concern to you.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for this, again, your answer there. I received, let me say, a comment from a listener, and this listener is saying, I heard a Christian say, let me just say that again. I heard a Christian say, is Jesus God? However, he died on the cross, and God can't die. This shows the confusion many so-called Christians have on this issue. Let me just repeat that. It's a longer comment, but I'm just doing this part of the comment now. So I heard a Christian say, is Jesus God? Although I'm doubting it because it wasn't put as a question mark. But anyway, it's saying, I heard a Christian say, is Jesus God? Or maybe they said Jesus is God, I think. Anyway, however, he died on the cross, and God can't die. This shows the confusion many so-called Christians have on this issue. So, Gregory, can you help us to understand, who is Jesus, and, and how,
First, the problem has to do with the conceptions they have imbibed. And very clearly, only those who have been born of flesh and blood, who have come here for a temporary period, only those can, after they have left the physical body, return to their origin. The death which is considered here is not the death of the physical body, for we are all being born in the world here on earth, in the world of matter, in gross matter particularly, and therefore in accordance with the will of the Almighty. which will does not change. When the time comes, we will put aside the physical body so that it will go back to dust. And we will, after leaving the physical body, it is the physical body that disintegrates to its primeval substance. The body of Christ, when he had left the physical body, that body is what has to disintegrate to its primeval substance. That is what is referred to as death. That is what many see. There is another death, that of the spirit. The death which is referred to as the spiritual death, that is the case in which the spirit seed grain, which had been permitted the opportunity to become conscious and subsequently self-conscious, failed to fulfill its tasks. It has developed along the wrong direction. Therefore, spiritually, when it has laid aside the physical body, and because it has been granted opportunities for many reincarnation and has not fulfilled that which it needs to fulfill, it will now fall back, it will revert back to its initial state as an unconscious spirit seed grain. So that is spiritual death. The case of Christ, he himself is not, strictly speaking, of spirit. His origin is divinity or substantiate. Divinity, which lies above creation. So when he shed the physical body, he returned to the species from which he himself departed in order to show the way to many a human personality such that they will know how to swing in the laws of creation which will permit them eternal life. So Christ shed the physical body because that physical body is what he needed to be able to interact with human personality. So there must be a clarification of what death is, such that the human personalities will have the right concept.
Thanks a lot for that answer, Gregory. I'm going to just do this second part of that message from the listener. I think this is a comment as well. So then many a Christian also has a difficulty in understanding what it means to love your enemy. Okay, yes, so then many a Christian also has difficulty in understanding what it means to love your enemy. Yes, so Gregory, what does that mean about loving your enemy?
In the first instance, who is the enemy? The enemy doesn't mean a particular person who is standing there. Many a person are their own worst enemies in their indolence, in their presumption. To love your enemy means to muster your strength to fight To fight the enemy doesn't mean the enemy is external. The enemy is likely to be within. When you have people having the wrong concepts, the wrong impressions, the need is there to fight against these wrong impressions. Just as you yourself muster your strength without destroying your body, because you love yourself, yet you deal with this enemy. Suppose the enemy is that drinking, lying. Mention all these things. Are these not enemies? Are they not internal? When you fight these enemies, do you destroy yourself? So, to love your enemies only means to develop a strategy by which you will overcome the challenges that has been posed in front of you. It is a battle, and that battle sometimes is internal or sometimes is external. Just as you will deal with the personal or the internal battles, use a similar pattern in the love you have for yourself in dealing with the external battle.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Gregory. In my research, I found a lot of quotes of Jesus in regards to, his commandments about love. I'm just thinking maybe I'll just share them. This one is, this is from John chapter 15, verse 13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. I'll just repeat that. That's in John chapter 15, verse 13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. So Gregory, that looks, you could call it the ultimate sacrifice, where you are willing to die to save your friends. And of course, this is coming from Jesus, so people took that to what happened to Jesus, that's what he did. What can I say? Is there anything you want to say to that, Gregory?
It is surprising that these are interpreted that way. That to lay down one's life means to die. You can use your life as a foundation. And life doesn't mean death. These are two different things. So to lay down your life could mean to have a firm foundation. That firm foundation, you lay it in such a way that you are now prepared to battle, just as Christ battled with Lucifer and with evil. So to lay down, really strictly speaking, doesn't mean to do nothing, allow them to decimate you. No, but to fight, not only in thoughts, with one's intuitions, with one's means that has been made available to the individual. That is how you lay a firm foundation down to be able to combat and not just allow yourself to be decimated. Very sadly, even many disciples never ever reflected on this, but just took the words of Christ and added their own to it and accepted it as a matter of fact. such are distorted. Only he himself or herself who strive to understand the words of Christ aright, only those are striving after the truth, such that that which has been given to them, they are prepared to examine, to weigh, and to build upon it. To build on something means to lay it down and as a foundation and to build upon it. That is the picture of laying down, and not the picture of, permitting yourself to be killed. Just as it is said that you find that he has come to die, and no, far, far from it.
Thanks for that. Here I have another, I'm just picking a few quotes now. This one is from Matthew chapter 6, verse 30. It says, again, it's of course Jesus speaking, and if God cares so wonderfully for the wild flowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? This is Jesus talking to his disciples, so just to give the context. So let me repeat that. And if God cares so wonderfully for wild flowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? Gregory, what is Jesus trying to tell his disciples there?
Though it would be better for many to reflect on this and use the basis of the living word, which is the laws of creation, to understand this aright, you will find that even these expressions resonate with the laws of creation. Here you have the wildflowers, basically plants. Plants, they have a shorter lifespan. Now ask yourself, that which is of matter, basically one is considering flowers, which many can perceive with their eyes, and then that which is of spirit, which is granted the free will to make decisions, which also has been granted greater power to be able to navigate the challenges that it may come across. Now, one can already perceive that those who have been granted more is expected of them. However, they need to make use of that which has been granted them spiritually. Only when they make use of that power which has been granted them spiritually, because in the weavings of creation, the Lord Almighty has granted these possibilities such that the human personality doesn't need to worry. The worries came into it sometimes out of indolence or out of neglect. That which they need to build up upon, they have not. Hence the worries.
Thanks a lot, Gregory. And I'm going to read something which is very relevant to what you've just pointed out there, which is, again, another quote here from Jesus. It's John chapter 13 this time, verses 34 to 35. So it's again Jesus speaking. So I'm now giving you a new commandment. Love each other. This is to the disciples. I'm now giving you a new commandment. Love each other, just as I have loved you. you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. So that's, I can say, Gregory, that's really in line with what you've just said there. And I want to now move on actually to one more quote now. This is again from Jesus, which is, this is after Jesus actually had been crucified, and then he rose, and then he appeared to the disciples. So, but then at this moment, the disciples had recognized Jesus, that it was Jesus with them. So, in any case, let me just. This is now from John, chapter 21, verse 14. I think it's a bit more than 14, but in any case, that's where I've got the reference. John 21, verse 14. This is now the third time Jesus showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? He said to him, Yes, Lord, I know that I love you. He said to him, Feed my lambs. He said to him a second time, Simon, the son of Jonah, do you love me? And he said to him, Yes, Lord, I know that I love you. He said to him, Tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter was grieved, because he said to him the third time, Do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Feed my sheep. Gregory, it seems that despite, again, Jesus speaking to his disciple there, despite what how can I say, the words of Jesus, which is being repeated to Simon in this case, it seems Jesus has to repeat it to his disciples, because they somehow are not, I don't know if they're lacking some courage, or they are, not quite understanding what is the love that Jesus is referring to. So, yeah, because even that Simon Peter was saying, he was wondering why he's being told 3 times. And so, Gregory, why was Jesus doing that?
Basically, you will find that only that ability which is used again and again, only that ability is strengthened. If you do not speak, or say if you are a so-called sportsman and you do not play the football, or if you are a speechwriter and you don't practice it, only when things are put into practice, only in that pattern do you have the strengthening of that which has been permitted. Now, there's a point one wishes to bring out. He said it was the third time that Jesus permitted himself to be seen, or showed himself to them. Yet, Christ is supposed to have left. If he were of flesh and blood, like many will hold, then they would have been seeing him again and again. So, but from time to time, the internal eyes, the inner eyes of these disciples were brought into further activities. so that they could see the non-physical body of their Lord. Christ himself, who knows of the abilities of these disciples and could perceive how they are proceeding, have to be told again and again, as a teacher would do, by repeating certain things such that it is well hammered into these students. After all, they are disciples. The disciple is supposed to do as their master have done. In the initial case where he gave them the example of the Good Samaritan, he told them, "Go thee and do likewise." Now he is giving them the task to use what he himself has taught them to teach others through examples. He also granted them the power, for he knew only when this power is used, as they are his disciples, only then will they be strengthened. He said it not once, not twice, but 3 times. So you will find out of his inner wisdom, out of his inner kindness, the Lord offered to the disciples in all gentleness how they must proceed in order to reach others, such that it will be of benefit not only to the disciples but to others that they will communicate these things to. After all, he's saying, "Feed my sheep." Christ himself, being the living love, through which all that exists in creation came into existence, for the radiations of him permitted human personalities to have a form. These are his sheep. Pass on to them that which I have granted you. He granted them not only the form, he granted them the will of the Almighty. Above all, he granted them the power. That was why they were able to move, and when they acted in accordance with the will of the Almighty, that power was with them. They could baptize and they could bless. So it becomes clear to why he had to speak in such a way.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for this answer. Dear listeners, I want to let you know you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is a Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. If you wish to know more about the Grail message, or want to get a copy of the Grail message, then you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is the gift of love. If you have any questions, you can contact us on our UK number. I'll put the prefix here, which is +44 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1.com. That's, I'll spell that, blessradio with the number 1.com. And if you scroll down on the home page, you'll see a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. And we are also broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1, space Grail message, space the topic of our show tonight, which is the gift of love. And after the show ends, you can listen to a recording of this show. That's 8 p.m. tonight, UK time. Again, you go to youtube.com and type in the search box. It's the same words, Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1 there, space, Grail message, space, the gift of love. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno, that's ZENO.fm/radio/bless radio 1. That's the number 1 there. Now, again, staying with the Bible, we are now want to move to a story which is really quite incredible. This is after Jesus had left, you can say, and this is about the story of Saul, who had been murdering many Christians, and he was on this road to Damascus, on the journey on the road to Damascus, and then Jesus appeared, and this is the conversation that is described in Acts, that is chapter 9, verses 3 to 8. As Saul journeyed near Damascus to persecute believers, a bright light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard Jesus ask, "Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me?" leaving him temporarily blinded. The bright light, a sudden light from heaven, shined around him. The voice of Jesus. Jesus identified himself. "I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest," and told Saul to enter the city for further instructions. I must say, I think this is not quite the actual text. Let me apologize for that. I've now found the actual text. I apologize. Because that is the description there. So sorry for that, listeners. I'm going to read again. This is Acts chapter 9, verses 3 to 8. This is Saul on his journey to Damascus. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting," he replied. "Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." The men traveling with Saul stood there speechless. They heard the sound, but did not see anyone. Saul got up from the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he could see nothing. So they led him by hand into Damascus. Now, that was because he was blinded, or temporarily blinded, let me say. So, now, Gregory, we know this Saul later, with the story, if you know, he became Paul the Apostle. So, which is incredible, and this happened because of this experience. So my question there, Gregory, is, we've been talking about love, and that's good, of course. And then there's another aspect in this life that we are seeking, let's say. It is called justice. And in a way, one's inside thinks, oh yes, love is good, but justice is also necessary. We need justice. And then here is an example where somebody who's Saul, who's been persecuting and murdering, or persecuting, I don't know if he actually murdered Christian. I think he did kill, but I have to say I'm not 100% sure right now. So he was persecuting Christians, and now in this story he now turned around to become, you could say, one of the greatest apostles of Jesus, even though he never met Jesus, actually, not at least in his life on the earth. So, now, Gregory, I'm thinking about justice. When somebody, let's say, murders or persecutes, there should be some penalty, you would think. But here, that never happened. In fact, he was, let's say, turned into a servant for God, or for Jesus, as he became an apostle. So my question on that is, where is justice when somebody has wronged, and and they appear to not get what you would think is the right punishment for what wrong they have done. So in this case, they're even, let's say, given a new task, which of course they agree to that task, you could say, to work for Jesus. So I want to ask, where is the justice in the crimes of what Saul did?
According to human conceptions, they expect justice to be in a flash, to come and strike Saul immediately. When Saul committed his acts, there was a build-up within the ethereal realm which will return to strike him. However, the possibility is also there that subsequently, when it comes to recognition of his guilt, which he did, the possibility is there that he will build around himself a layer such that when these reciprocal activities return their karma, the likelihood is there that the effect they will have on him could be minimal. That does not mean these reciprocal activities did not come about. They did. One can also see along the line his further activities, where he was stoned, when he got to Rome, many of the things which he did, what he had to suffer, And he had to reflect very deeply on what he himself had done. And he was filled to the brim with regrets because he had the wrong conception of what justice is and what love is. And one of the writings he laid down when he talked about love, what it is, he then realized what that love is in his reflections. And he communicated it in the consideration he showed to others. So, love and justice, one coin, but different side of one coin. You find there is justice in love, there is love in justice. They work together. They are not separated.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for this answer and explanation you're giving to us. As you can say, or people can say, that God's justice work as a different way to the human thinking, but it is absolutely justice that happens. So even if you don't see it in front of you immediately, there is always justice. So as you pointed out, in case of Saul, who became Paul, the apostle, his life experiences he had to go through in quotes to, whether you can call it redemption or to take the next part of his task that he had to do. Well, he came to realize about, he had to go through that experience. So in that way, you can say he redeemed, but not like, he killed, so he must be killed as well. So it's not the way we think. It must be this way, so the equivalent must happen like that. It can happen in a different way. Now, let us, I'm going to now, what I will do now, we haven't so far directly referred to the Grail message, and I would like to read now a lecture from the Grail message. It's only one page, which is titled The Religion of Love. And I would like to, how can I say, when we finish that, to reflect on that. So, as I said, this is a lecture called The Religion of Love from the Grail message. The religion of love has been misunderstood because the concept of love has in many ways been distorted and misrepresented. For the greater part of true love is severity. Now, what is now called love is anything but love. If all so-called love were relentlessly sifted to the bottom, nothing would remain but selfishness, vanity, weakness, desire for ease, conceit, or instinct. Genuine love will take no account of what gratifies the other, of what is agreeable to him and gives him joy, but will only direct itself towards what will benefit him, regardless of whether it affords him pleasure or not. That is genuine love and service. If therefore it is written, love your enemies, it means do that which will benefit them. Punish them if they cannot otherwise be made to understand. That is serving them. But justice must prevail, for love cannot be separated from justice. They are one. Misplaced indulgence would mean fostering the faults of the enemies and thus letting them slide further on the downward path. Would that be love? On the contrary, by acting thus, one would burden oneself with guilt. Through the unexpressed wishes of man alone, the religion of love has been deteriorated to a religion of laxity, as also the personality of the bringer of truth, Christ Jesus, has been dragged down to one of weakness and yielding, characteristics which he never possessed. It was just because of his all-embracing love that he was so harsh and severe among the men of intellect. That he was often overcome with sadness is natural when one considers his high mission and the human material he had to deal with. This sadness had nothing whatever to do with weakness. After eliminating all distortions and dogmatic restrictions, the religion of love will be a doctrine of the strictest consistency, in which no weakness or illogical indulgence is to be found. So that, dear listeners, that was a lecture I've read from the Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdushin, called The Religion of Love. Now, Gregory, there we have you could say, an explanation of how love is practiced by humanity, or their concept, human beings' concept of what love is, which is what we are discovering far from how it is in reality, in the sense of the true meaning of love, what is genuine love. So I'm going to ask, how can we truly recognize and appreciate what love really is, or practice what it really is? Yeah. Gregory, did you get me there?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, I'm asking, how can we human beings practice love as it truly is, to appreciate and recognize as love what it truly is, rather than our misconception that we have of love?
That which is of benefit to the individual, intuitively or spiritually, that must be extended to others. That was what Christ put forward when he himself said, "Go thee and do likewise." That is how the activities of love works, where the human personality must do everything it can to extend to others that which has been beneficial and could be challenging to him. As he himself has considered this, in spite of all his shortcomings, the individual that wishes to extend love must consider others who have to overcome many a challenge in order to be able to extend that which is beneficial to them.
Thanks for that, Gregory. Now, we just have 2 minutes left, so I'm not going to read, because that's what I read already is a how can I say, sufficient to point to the Grail message. So I just want to say a few words, I think. So dear listeners, thank you for joining us for this discussion on the gift of love, and hope you've enjoyed it. And hopefully you can see that there's a certain idea we've had of love being weak or soft or indulging, forgiving. And yet, that's not really that concept we have, indulging or forgiving everything, let's say, and so on, is not correct. Because what is lacking there is justice. And love and justice worked as one. And hopefully this example of the story of Saul in the Bible, who was an enemy of Christians and Jesus, and then he turned round after Jesus appeared to him to become a servant, an apostle of Jesus, and serve, to introduce I don't want to use the word spread, but he, brought Christianity to the rest of the world in a way, with his one of the strongest, you could say, apostles and disciple of Jesus. So what I'm pointing to is an enemy, a so-called enemy, can be turned into a servant of God, and the way it happened, you might have expected, oh no, you need to pay for what he has done. Yes, you need to pay for what he has done, but also there's something he's meant to fulfill, and that task, it works in love and in justice. So it came together that way. So this story, because let's say, very quick to condemn when we see something in quotes wrong being done, and then we forget that there's also something called redemption. So every human being, yes, who hasn't sinned, however, everybody can also redeem it, and that we must never forget. So condemning then goes out of the window when you realize that you can redeem it. So yes, I'm going to stop there. Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing listeners a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you. Same from me, listeners. Have a wonderful week ahead. We'll be back as usual next Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic. Take care. Good